He painted the most famous smile in history. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. Leonardo da Vinci wasn't just a painter. He was a scientist, an inventor, an architect, a philosopher. And his life? A wild genius ride that feels more like a movie than real history. By the way, where are you watching from? And what time is it over there? Let me know down in the comments. I always love seeing how far this community stretches across the world. In the quiet hills of Tuscany on April 15th, 1452, a child was born in a small village called Vinci. The world didn't notice. There were no grand celebrations, no royal decrees, no noble lineage to make this birth feel significant. And yet this boy, Leonardo, would one day change the way humanity sees everything. He was born out of wedlock. His father, Ser Piero da Vinci, was a respected notary in the nearby city. His mother, Caterina, was a poor local woman, likely a maid or a farmer's daughter. Their brief union broke no rules of love, but it placed Leonardo in a difficult position. In the 15th century Italy, being illegitimate was a mark. It meant you couldn't inherit your father's estate, you couldn't attend the finest schools, you weren't quite inside society, but not entirely outside it either. Leonardo grew up between two worlds. On one side was the educated, refined life of his father's household. Papers, contracts, conversations about politics and property. On the other side, the earthy, grounded life of the countryside, animals, fields, the smell of wet stone after rain. And maybe it was this duality, this mix of refinement and raw nature that shaped the way his mind worked. From an early age, Leonardo stood apart. He didn't just see the world, he observed it. A bird's wing wasn't just feathers to him, it was an engineering marvel. The way water rippled over rocks fascinated him more than most children could ever explain. He was quiet, curious, and constantly lost in thought. Not the child you scold, but the kind you quietly worry about, because his head always seemed somewhere far away. Unlike other boys his age, Leonardo didn't train to be a merchant or a lawyer. He didn't memorize religious doctrine to prepare for the priesthood. Instead, he watched ants carry leaves. He drew sketches in the dirt with sticks. He studied how shadows moved on walls. He had no formal schooling beyond basic reading and writing. He never learned Latin properly, the language of science and law at the time. But where others saw this as a limitation, Leonardo turned it into liberation. He learned not from books, but from the world itself. The world never expected anything from Leonardo da Vinci, but he expected everything from the world. And that was the beginning of everything. As Leonardo grew into boyhood, it became clear he didn't interact with the world the way others did. He didn't just look, he watched, not with casual glances, but with intense, deliberate focus. While other children ran through the fields chasing games, Leonardo lingered behind, crouching low, studying how a lizard moved across a rock, or how the veins of a leaf fanned outward like rivers. He noticed the flight of birds, how their wings curved, how their feathers caught the air. He stared at flowing water for hours, watching how it curved around obstacles, how it created ripples and spirals. And the sky? He looked at clouds the way most people look at paintings. This was an aimless daydreaming. This was research, primitive, instinctual, untrained, but profoundly focused. He had no formal science, no mathematics, no philosophy. But Leonardo was conducting experiments, quietly, with his eyes. Most of what we know about this part of his life comes not from documents, but from his drawings and notes years later. Even as an adult, he would recall in remarkable detail the things he had observed as a boy, the structure of plants, the way light danced through trees, the swirling patterns of dust kicked up by wind. He began to draw, not scribbles, not childish stick figures, but deeply detailed sketches, animals, faces, plants, and strange creatures born from his imagination. Art was more than talent. For Leonardo, it was the language to explain the world to himself. He had no mentor yet, no guidance, but his eyes were already becoming his first teacher, and nature his first classroom. He asked endless questions. Why is the sky blue? Why do bats fly differently than birds? Why does a cat always land on its feet? Adults gave him simple answers, or none at all. But Leonardo wasn't asking for answers. He was building a library of questions. This relentless curiosity, even as a child, made him different. It also made him lonely at times. He was quiet, thoughtful, and deeply internal. Not the child to speak out loud, but one who whispered thoughts to himself, sketched them into dirt, and stored them in his mind like treasures. Even then, it was obvious. Leonardo wasn't just in the world. He was already... Art, science, and innovation were shaping a new world. And yet, for a child born out of wedlock, access to elite education was still closed. He couldn't attend the traditional universities. Latin, the language of scholars and science, remained elusive. But Leonardo didn't seem to mind. He wasn't learning through textbooks. He was learning through trial, touch, and vision. And through it all, his drawings grew more precise, more detailed, more alive. He began to draw things he hadn't even seen yet. Imaginary animals, machines, strange devices powered by gears and pulleys. Even at a young age, he was blending reality with invention. Art and engineering had already begun to merge in his mind. One story tells of young Leonardo creating a shield for a family friend. But instead of a traditional family crest, he painted a monstrous creature so terrifying, complete with fire-breathing snakes and sharp claws, that it stunned the recipient. Leonardo's imagination wasn't just active, it was boundless. And yet, for all his talent, Leonardo remained quietly observant. He didn't boast, he didn't demand attention, he just kept drawing. Drawing for Leonardo wasn't a pastime. It was his first form of thinking. It was how he made sense of what he saw, and eventually it would become the foundation of everything he would do. By the time Leonardo was a teenager, his drawings had begun to attract more than just curious glances. They sparked genuine interest, especially from his father, Ser Piero, who recognized that his son's gift was far beyond what most young boys could ever hope to achieve. Florence, during the mid-15th century, was more than a city. It was a crucible of genius. Art, architecture, philosophy, and innovation thrived in the narrow stone streets. Great minds like Botticelli, Donatello, and even a young Michelangelo walked those same paths. If there was anywhere a boy like Leonardo could bloom, it was there. At age 14, Ser Piero took Leonardo's drawings to one of Florence's most respected artists, Andrea del Verrocchio. Verrocchio was no ordinary painter. He was a sculptor, goldsmith, engineer, and designer. His workshop was a hub of talent, a place where gifted apprentices could learn the crafts of painting, anatomy, mechanics, and more. Verrocchio accepted Leonardo into his studio. The boy from Vinci stepped into a world of artistic intensity and limitless learning. As an apprentice, Leonardo didn't start with paints and brushes. First, he learned the fundamentals: grinding pigments, preparing.